Why is personal branding necessary? Why is this something as a software developer? Why is personal branding something you should have to care about? Well, as we discussed during last week's stream, which was all about trying to go ahead and get high commanding developer salaries, we discussed that by and large, the thing that stops most people from getting hired is that they're asking for a lot of money, but they also present a lot of risk to their employer. So they're not getting let's say, they're not essentially doing a good job of de-risking themselves, making them seem credible, raising the employer's confidence that they're going to have some success in whatever it is they're tasked with doing. So personal branding can help with this. What personal branding can really help you do is it lets you stand out from the crowd. So essentially, you pick something you care about and you specialize in it. That's the big idea. So when we go down the road of personal branding, we're essentially telling people what we care about, what we're good at, and we do this through the different types of actions we take online. As a result of developing some visible expertise, or at least passion, if not expertise, in some areas, you actually de-risk yourself in the eyes of prospective employers or other people who might offer you an opportunity potentially. So it gives you the opportunity to go ahead and stand out from the crowd a little bit, de-risk yourself. And you de-risk yourself. We talked about this last week in the stream about developer salaries. We talked about the different ways of trying to build, basically trying to build proof. There's proof of work, which is the strongest. This is like having a GitHub profile that has a lot of activity on it, is a really strong form of proof of work. Then there's proof of knowledge, which is what personal branding is about. It's being able to demonstrate, here's what I'm into, here's what I know how to do, and here's what I like. And then finally, there's social proof, which is other people being able to vouch for you because they've worked with you before and they know your worth. And so social proof goes a long way. But most of the people who struggle to find opportunities are people who usually don't have the social proof to get there yet. Once you have social proof, you can always go ahead and find opportunities from other people you've worked with before, and that kind of makes it a lot easier for you to go ahead and find attract the types of opportunities you want. And that's really point number 3. Personal branding is a way to go ahead and say to the universe, here's what Aaron Standard, am about. I'm into open source, I'm into startups, I'm into .NET, and specifically I'm really into building, distributed systems, and I'm into quality control, and I'm into process automation, all this sort of stuff. Well, people who are looking for a front-end developer probably aren't going to be very interested in trying to hire me. I am terrible at it. I have done nothing to go ahead and try to shore up any of my bona fides in the area. And you know what? I am perfectly comfortable not getting any opportunities in that department. And the reason is that's just not really what I care about. And my personal brand online, you kind of think of it in terms of polarization to some extent, which is polarization when it comes to, let's say, social stuff is about sending a signal to opportunities or let's say, opportunities or companies that are looking for someone who's not you. You might want to go ahead and give them a signal. It's like, hey, I'm probably not your person. And that's okay. But the people who are looking for something special, let's say a technical hiring manager or maybe a venture capitalist, or maybe even an employee, if you go ahead and run a business, having a personal brand helps you kind of sculpt sort of what opportunities you might be receptive to and which ones you may not be. And finally, this last sort of little bullet point down here in terms of why why personal branding is necessary. Reputation is more fungible than resumes. What do I mean by that? Overwhelmingly, in terms of what a resume is used for in developer hiring, it's checking boxes. I want to go ahead and say, okay, does this person know C#? What's their experience with SQL Server? What types of applications have they worked on before? But you know what? The reason why resumes are generally speaking pretty worthless is they're unverifiable for the most part. I've had people lie to me about all sorts of stuff on their resume before. Working on, exaggerating basically their role in a really big project in a large company. It's a really common one. Adding programming languages that they use on there, like very tangentially once, maybe. All sorts of different sorts of exaggerations there. So resumes are, generally speaking, they'll get you into the door. They'll allow a recruiter or someone who's managing a pipeline of candidates to kind of quickly figure out whether or not you're even applying for the right job at the company. But that's it. Resumes aren't worth very much. Building a personal brand that is robust around something that you care about is a really good tool for being able to attract the types of opportunities that you want. And so to get started building a personal brand, a lot of people might jump to, well, I'm not much of a marketer. I don't really like self-promoting. I don't like blah, blah, blah. As developers, a lot of us tend to be pretty introverted and not necessarily all that keen on the types of self-promotion that kind of come with personal branding. The first thing I'd suggest to everybody when it comes to personal branding is to reframe your thinking around that. Don't look at it as the sole reason why you're doing personal branding. Shouldn't be actually about trying to find jobs you want. That's a benefit of it. But the primary reason why we do this is that we want to go ahead and try to attract the types of opportunities. The primary reason why we do this is we want to go ahead and share what we're passionate about. And that's kind of what's the core of building a strong personal brand. And that reminds me, my title and information for the stream actually got wiped out when I had to shut off OBS for a second here. I'm going to go ahead and update that real quick. Okay, there we go. Should have just changed my title information there. Update. All right, my fault for not clicking the button earlier. So let's go ahead and go shut out PowerPoint here. That's all I have as far as slides go. I wanted to go ahead and take a moment to kind of talk a little bit about, personal branding, what it looks like in practice, how you can get started with it. So I actually wanted to take a look at someone who I think has done a very, very good job with personal branding, has launched a business around it, and a big career in .NET. This is Dominic Bayer, otherwise known as Least Privilege on Twitter. Dominic is one of the two authors of Identity Server, a very popular project, which we're going to talk about in our next segment too. A very popular project that's all built around basically doing basically token servers, identity management, that type of stuff. All sort of modern web applications need to be secured using a tool like this. Well, let's take a little look at his website. Now, a couple of things I'm going to point out about personal branding for software developers. So Dominic's business is all about identity and access control. So this has morphed into a career for him, but it didn't always start that way. Back 10 years ago, which I believe his blog actually does go that far back. Yeah, we can go all the way back to May 2004. Let's go ahead and take a look at what my man was talking about back then. So May 29, 2004. So we're looking at 17 years in the past. This was, I was graduating high school around then, just for reference. What's he talking about? Well, talking a little bit about as man, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is Active Directory. Okay, application group. Go here. These are all sort of, let's say, short blog posts about working with some of the other security tools. He's going to go ahead and do some work up here, talking a bit about, secure string, which is a way you might want to go ahead and securely store things like a password for TLS certificate. We've got some stuff here on doing data protection, manage ACLs, SSPI, Kerberos support, etc. Dominic was not the author of Identity Server back then. He was a software developer, and these are the types of problems that he dealt with when he was at work. And he blogged about his experience. And a lot of these blog posts he's putting together. Let's take a look at the secure string one, for instance. So he goes ahead and talks about the fact that, first thing I want to go ahead and mention is this new secure string class that was recently added to .NET. So normal strings in .NET are not pinned. The garbage collector can move them around in memory, leaving several copies in memory. While not pinned, can be swapped out to a page file. are not mutable. So whenever you change them, you'll have an old and new version memory. Cannot be cleared, are not encrypted. So normally, as a .NET developer, these are immaterial to you, all these things. But if you're someone who deals with, let's say, highly sensitive information that needs to be encrypted, these are all things that make a big difference. So Dominic's doing a pretty good job here of kind of setting us up for, here's how, this standard tool we use every day in .NET development works. Well, Secure String is going to go ahead and provide all these features, and he's linking to, looks like, recommended blog posts from the Microsoft Developer Network. But we go ahead and talk a little bit about, let's see, Erasable Data, about how encryption can be established through the unmanaged Crypt Protect memory API, and so forth. So basically, looks like, so this is around the time 2004. This must have been around the time .NET 2.0 was coming out. It's the first major update to the .NET framework. I remember actually I learned .NET framework, I think about a year after this, May of 2005, during my first real software development internship at a company called Fair Isaac. They're the guys who compute your credit scores when you want to get a mortgage. So he talks a bit about this new secure string feature being introduced, talks about how you can have this type of, let's say, erasable behavior. We can go ahead and purge that string data from memory once you need to go and change it, make sure it doesn't end up on the page file and so forth. And this is a real short blog post. But what does this demonstrate? Well, it demonstrates basically, along with all the other content on his blog, demonstrates his focus and his expertise. He basically is immediately able to go ahead and spell out like, hey, here's why a normal string in C# might have some security problems. Here's a new solution Microsoft introduced. By the way, here's a way you can go ahead and use this Erasable Data class, even has a little typo right here. Dominic's German, so English isn't his first language, so we'll forgive that. And shows how to do this. And you can use it like such. This is really simple stuff. So personal branding for a developer has been really successful at it. Dominic's very successful in the .NET space and is recognized as, one of the probably in the entire .NET community. Dominic and his co-founder Brock on Identity Server are right up there with people like Troy Hunt and Barry Durans in terms of all the experts in the .NET security space, particularly around access control and all that stuff. And it's because he's shown up over and over again and delivered written content about what he's passionate about, which is security. So as a sort of little first example of personal branding, this is someone who picked something that interests him, specialized in it, and he just showed up and wrote a lot of content about it. As a result of that, he was able to attract opportunities. He was probably also able to attract, like I think if I look back here on May 2004, he has a blog post called Pluralsight. Oh, hey, get a load of this. So they just launched a brand new company called Pluralsight. Don't miss that. Well, Pluralsight's now a publicly traded company. That's what a blast in the past that is. But Dominic has Pluralsight courses. I've met him at conferences in person. He's able to go ahead and attract a lot of opportunities that all kind of fit within this domain. You can do that too. Anyone can. You don't have to spend a ton of money on having a custom blog theme or a logo designed. You don't have to sit down and belt out a ton of really high production YouTube videos. You don't have to have a giant Twitter following. The most important ingredient for personal branding at the very beginning is you just got to focus on what it is you really care about and make sure you show up and write about that pretty frequently. So I've got some other examples of people who've done this well that I want to go ahead and take a look at. But I also want to remind everybody in chat, if you've got questions, go ahead and drop them in there. All right, Zach Overflow. Hope I'm not breaking your flow. What do you think about writing about tech and personal hobbies? Hey, Zach, that's a great question. So to sort of frame that a little bit, Zach's asking like, hey, I don't necessarily want to be typecast to doing just one thing. If I'm Dominic and I also like, talking about photography or drinking beer or bike riding or whatever, how can I go ahead and mix and match both those things? Well, I actually do a bit of this on my personal blog. So Zach, a long time ago, when when I was in college, I came up with the insane idea of wanting to write about marketing instead of doing software development, because I very mistakenly believe marketing had a lot more career mobility than software development did. Boy, I could not have been more wrong. I ended up changing course on that after about 2 years out of college. I learned a lot of really valuable things from marketing that have helped me a lot in my career as an entrepreneur. And so I definitely don't regret taking that job, but I did not enjoy writing about marketing nonstop. So my blog was called marketing-ninja.com. And you know what? When I decided I wanted to change and write about more things and not be so limited by one theme, it was really hard for me to do that. So I decided to go scorched earth and just completely delete that blog and create a brand new one. I guess, after I decided I was going to go ahead and stop doing marketing and try to get back into software development, which would have been in 2010. So this is my most recent stuff on my blog. And by the way, I'll go ahead and give an update on some of my personal branding stuff right now. I'm using a real simple blog theme. I'm just using GitHub pages to go and host this stuff. So you don't need a fancy, graphic artist to do it. So I write about, some open standard stuff, professional open source. I give an update on one of my businesses down here. But get a load of this. One of the things I blogged about, because this mattered a great deal to me, is I wrote a eulogy on my blog to my grandfather who passed away in January this year. He was 96. And I wanted to put it up here because I like occasionally taking a step back from talking about technology all the time and talk about other things that matter to me. In this case, it was talking about what I learned from my grandfather and also kind of contrasting how dangerous his period was. He was a World War II veteran. His family moved from Missouri to California like something straight out of Grapes of Wrath. He had a very extraordinary story. I blogged about this and shared it because, here I am with my wife, my grandfather. This was last summer sometime. And I just wanted to go ahead and share that because it mattered to me. And this sort of stuff, if you take a look at the comments and everything down here, these are people who primarily follow me through tech. I also got a lot of nice private emails too. But these are people who primarily follow me because of what I wrote about technology. But everyone's a human being. And so you should make your personal brand, genuinely, it should be about you and about what you like and what you care about. So if you want to talk about things that aren't software, you should make some space for doing that. I think I have some other examples of that. Let's see. Having skin in the game, talking a bit about Microsoft, more open source. Let's see. I have some other ones. Yeah, here we go. I'll go and open these up. So I went ahead and talked about this in 2018. Published this on my birthday, actually. I'm an October 16th birthday. I just talked a little bit about taking risks, basically, is kind of what this blog post is about. And this is about somewhat of the same thing, about the high price of comfort. Ultimately, if you pursue comfort at the cost of all, above everything else, you end up living a relatively boring and unaccomplished life. And you end up also depriving yourself a lot of things you might actually want. So pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is for your own benefit in the grand scheme of things, is basically what I argue here. So none of this is about technology. And when it comes to, let's say, the idea of like a personal brand, here's, I guess, my first piece of advice is, find what you're passionate about and basically just, it's like that Woody Allen quote, 80% of life is just showing up. Well, 80% of having a personal brand is just talking about things you like. That's basically it. And then trying to do a very good, thorough job of it as well. So I'd say the second big thing for personal branding is, in addition to talking about things that you like, because it might, connect you to other people who are interested in those same topics. I would also say that talking about things you like that don't necessarily advance your career goals is a worthwhile activity to participate in too. So if I was super into mountain biking and I wanted to talk about, I got the latest Specialized cross trail bike and I gave a little review of it here, maybe I'd lose some subscribers on MailChimp every now and then when I did that, or maybe I'd lose, I don't know, some followers on Twitter if they were, really offended by the concept of me riding a mountain bike. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It should be about you. And I personally like when I'm looking at, let's say, working with somebody, I like a little bit of sort of color to what they're about and their, their sort of MO, so to speak. I think that adds a lot of character, helps me kind of understand, like, oh, okay, so this is someone who really values their fitness and they work really hard. Or this is someone who really enjoys being an expert in all things. Like this developer is really sophisticated when they're talking about front-end JavaScript frameworks. But then I can also see they bring that same level of intensity to talking about things like tasting wine, for instance, right? So it's kind of interesting to kind of see those traits show up. So my advice is you should go for it. Absolutely, Zach. Just, I would say just make sure you strike a balance. You don't necessarily want to do too much of one thing and none of the other. That's probably the biggest bit. Second question from Himjay. How often do you recommend publishing content? Well, I have been notoriously inconsistent about that with my personal blog. So if I take a look here. So I think I have 10 articles per page. How old is the oldest article? Next Decade .NET Open Source. January 23rd, 2010. Okay. So that means that it's been almost 18 months since the beginning of 2020. So I'm averaging about one blog post every 7 weeks, roughly, is what that looks like. It would probably be better if I published more frequently. Like if I did a blog post a month, that'd be pretty good. It'd be even better if I did like 2 or 3 a month, probably. So I think the more, more is better. It gives you more at-bats to try to connect with people. And by the way, the earlier you on in your blogging experience, the more, or by the way, personal branding doesn't necessarily need to be just blogging. I'm going to pull up a couple developers who are doing it primarily through Twitter, who I think are very effective at it. And yeah, they're probably also writing longer form content to kind of go along with what they're doing on Twitter. But I kind of want to go ahead and stick with long form stuff here because this is kind of where my experience has been. Now let's see. I wanted to go back to the front page. Let's take a look at what my publishing sort of cadence started off with, let's say back in 2010 when I started. All right. So let's see. This is May 14th, 2010. So my blog just turned, last week, just turned 11 years old. How about that? So I have one blog post here. How many are on this page? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And let's see where I'm at. Okay, I'm at May. I've done, at this rate, one blog post every 2 days during my early part here. That's quite a bit. But the important thing that you want to kind of do is if you start attracting people to your website, you want to go ahead and give them a lot of stuff of yours to explore. And people who really connect with what you have to say are more likely to subscribe. So if I go here, .NET Culture Shock. Why .NET adoption lags among startups. This is July 3rd, 2010. So since May 14th, all the way up to July 3rd, I've written 17 posts. And by the way, this is just totally a coincidence that I happened to stumble across this post. But this post was the thing that launched my career as not just a software developer, but also as an entrepreneur. I published this blog post because the startup I was kind of working on, really it was like a side project. I was working on it in my spare time and I was writing all this stuff down here, blah, 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 all that. Well, the problems that I was running into was that ultimately the .NET ecosystem was not really able to make it easy for me as a self-funded 24-year-old developer who had been out of practice for software development for a couple years, mind you. Wasn't really easy for me to go ahead and fund my own way to try to break back into doing software development here. And I went ahead and I wrote about how basically, Microsoft is very focused on the enterprise because their tools cost money It's very difficult for people like me to go ahead and try to build new software platforms on top of it. So like, for instance, I remember driving to, I think it was like a Fry's, to go ahead and buy a $400 license for the lowest edition of Visual Studio I could afford, And so I, talked a bit just about that and how I thought that experience was suboptimal. And then blah, 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 blah. I just kind of went and drilled into a whole bunch of this detail here. Now, unfortunately, my comments don't show up here anymore because I migrated blog platforms from blogengine.net to Jekyll/GitHub Pages maybe about 7-8 years ago. No, not 7-8 years ago. Oh my God. Yeah, it was about 7 years ago. Man, I'm old. Jeez. Well, anyway, long story short, I had hundreds of comments on here. This blog post went to the front page of Hacker News, and I think about 33% of the IP addresses that ended up hitting my website that weekend, it was like July 4th, 2010. Yeah, so a day after this, were all from the Redmond IP block. So I ended up having someone who was on the .NET team responsible for working with early stage startups in California. So I was in San Diego at the time, and they ended up having me relocate to Los Angeles, sort of Santa Monica area. But the person who was responsible kind of managing the Bay Area on that team emailed me. We're still, by the way, very close friends to this day. We were just texting each other about cryptocurrency and some other stuff over the weekend. He basically sent me an email, goes, hey, our team's hiring for someone in Southern California who wants to solve this exact problem. Would you like to do it? And lo and behold, I ended up interviewing for that position. I had to go through an interview gauntlet at Microsoft, technical screen, a couple other things. Did really well, got a job offer, and they offered me like double the amount of money I was making as a marketer. So that was awesome. But more importantly, that job helped give me all sorts of experience that made me feel confident enough to go out and start my first company. So my personal brand as a scrappy little .NET guy trying to go ahead and build a startup really helped propel me and give me the credibility to go ahead and get a dream job from Microsoft, which was just fantastic. And my blog was not fancy. It was, I assure you, it probably looked pretty crappy. And, it was a labor of love. And it really helped me in my own career quite a bit. And that's why I want to share this advice tonight. I don't have anything to sell you at all. It's just, I feel very strongly that this is something that will help a lot of software developers. You don't have to be someone who's working a crowd in a room or someone who likes doing public speaking. You can still be a very effective writing long form blog posts and doing that type of content from the comfort of your own home. Let's see. ANKZ69. I really like developers who can build things from scratch and in response to a letter from a beginning programmer. For me as a junior developer, it's very useful. Well, I appreciate you saying that. Mike Bayer said, in terms of, I think this is in response to talking about how frequently publish. I'm publishing like once a year. Yeah, I've had some pretty dry years myself, man. I understand how that goes. I, in particular, was pretty bad. You want to see something awful? Let's take a look at the Petabridge blog. So Petabridge is like my company, but it's a distinct brand from myself. Like Petabridge is part of something I do, but I'm also chiefly responsible for writing all the content on here. Let's take a look at some really bad stuff. So when we launched the company in 2015, bam, we're doing like 3 articles a month on average. That's awesome. Things kind of slowed down a little bit towards December. 2016, we're still going pretty strong. And this 2017. And then 2018, I didn't publish anything until June of that year. And then I published something in August, but it's me announcing a product. And then I do some blog posts in September and October. These are all closely related to the product we just launched. I mean, man, that's a disaster. We should really be doing a lot more than that. Let's see how we're doing in 2020. 2 posts in January, none in February or March. To be fair, in February, I did have that polar vortex go ahead and chase me out of my house for like a week, which completely blew up our schedule. So I don't feel so bad about that. A couple of blog posts for May. We'll very likely have another one this month. So we're starting to get back into a more regular cadence. So personal branding, not just for yourself, also possibly for the company that you start in the event that you want to go and start your own business. So we've taken a look at like blogging from a personal branding perspective. I wanted to go ahead and pull up another developer who I think's been, let's see, let me find him here. Lead. I'm gonna have to go ahead and search for him real fast. Let's see. Lead. Oh, damn it. All right, well, if I can't find him, let me go ahead and see if I can find Bartosz, another guy who's good at doing this. Here we go, Bartosz Adamowski. All right, so Khalid from JetBrains is the guy I was going to try to show off because he does a really good job of this too, but I cannot find his stuff at the moment. So we'll go ahead and take a look at Bartosz instead. So Bartosz's brand, and he's basically a director of research, I think in his normal sort of 9-to-5 job. And he's very knowledgeable, very passionate, and he's someone who understands extremely low-level parts of .NET. So for like, this is stuff I have zero clue about. And I'm quote, a high-performance .NET developer in terms of what I do every day. The stuff that Bartosz is working on is like 2 like orders of magnitude closer to the metal than what I do. Like, I'm not worrying about structured line. Oh, okay. Thank you, Zach. You found him. Good. Well, Zach and AKZ, thank you guys. Appreciate that. All right. Okay. So let's go ahead and find some of his posts. All right. So he does these. He's got his, like I said, got a long form blog. Does that. So he's talking about handling HTTP status codes. But here's what I want to look for. Good. I saw this flying by earlier today. So check this out. This is kind of a new thing. So Khalid does this. Bartosz, then again, does this down here. And I think the other guy who does this pretty well is Konrad Koska. Konrad and Bartosz both kind of swim in similar circles. Konrad is an expert in the garbage collector in .NET and memory management. Bartosz is more dealing with things like the just-in-time compiler and other kind of low-level stuff like that. Khalid, who's an evangelist for JetBrains, this is the company behind Rider and ReSharper. Khalid tends to talk a little bit more about higher level. Well, when I say higher level, I mean stuff that a more general sort of .NET developer would find interesting. So not someone who's a performance nerd. So, talking about checking for nulls and default values. Now, Khalid's probably tweeted out maybe, I don't know, probably 40 or 50 of these since I've been paying attention. And they're fantastic. They get a decent amount of reach. 3 retweets and 23 likes. If we go ahead and moderate that down to, let's say, we go ahead and moderate that down to the level of like .NET developer virality, that's pretty good. If you're, you're probably not going to see a lot of tweets running around with 50,000 likes in the .NET community. There's just not quite enough people for that. But the gist of it is he goes and has a nice set of branding. So he's got a good color up here. He's got the sort of personalized theme. It's very unique. If someone ever tried to go ahead and steal this and retweet it, it'd be virtually impossible because so many of the different branded elements are so specific to his style. And he's able to go ahead and take this little tidbit of information and express it in a way that feels like fun and useful. So this is really helpful. This is the sort of thing that, by the way, one other thing I should point out about this style of personal branding, this is actually a lot harder than it looks. In a lot of ways, writing a long-form blog post can be a lot easier than putting together a pithy little screenshot like this. Because it's kind of like a... in my English classes, when I was going through school, one of the things my teachers taught me, and I absolutely believe it, is that writing a really captivating short story, like a story that might be only 5 or 6 pages long, is actually a lot harder than writing a full-length novel. And the reason why is that so much of the work you have to perform to go ahead and get your point across, to create, let's say, the normal 3-act structure that a good story has, you have to be able to do that in a lot less real estate. Same deal here. So Khalid's really talented. He's really good at putting this stuff at putting this stuff out there. And but it's really effective. So like, I wish I could do this, but it's one of those things where, like, actually, I kind of gave a lame attempt at this today. You guys want to see how lame mine was? Let me go ahead and pull up Aaron on the web here. If I go and pull this up, here's my lame ass attempt. If you ever need to stick a file or a key in a Pulumi secret, here's how to do it in PowerShell. Boom. Yeah, pretty lame-assed, right? But I put this out there because I think that it's you agree with how lame-assed it is? Oh man, I'm getting trolled by my own followers here. I went ahead and put this out there because this was really useful for me. I was trying to solve a pretty nasty problem. I needed to go ahead and take a big key that the Google API gave me for authenticating against Google Analytics. This is part of our KPI system that we're going to talk about on Thursday. And I needed to find some way to go and stick that inside a Pulumi secret. And lo and behold, this actually worked just fine. So I was very proud of that. Yeah, you're exactly right, Zach. You got to start somewhere with this stuff. You got to go ahead and start somewhere in the personal branding train. Yeah, hell yeah, I'm using Commander. It looks cool. This is like taking the command prompt and putting fenders on it. It's awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely down for that. If someone comes up with a cooler terminal, I will also jump ship and use that too. But for the meantime, I heart Commander. I'll go ahead and keep using it. Windows terminal for the win. All right. Well, I'll check that out sometime. So the bottom line with Khalid and with Bartosz is that if you go ahead and come up, let's say you don't like doing long form blog posts, you feel like they're too long. Well, if you're someone working on something somewhat specialized, or in the case of Khalid, if you're going and looking for ways to show off new language features, which makes a lot of sense as part of his job at Resharper, or not Resharper, JetBrains. They're in the business of selling developer tools. Makes sense that he'd be kind of looking at those features, looking at how, Writer or Resharper finds a way to express something concisely. Those are really kind of novel examples of using Twitter as a medium for personal branding. Now, next things you can go ahead and take a look at as far as mediums go is that if you don't want to do Twitter, you don't want to do blogs, next thing you can go ahead and take a look at is potentially doing video. That can be like Twitch, what we're doing right now, or it could be doing YouTube videos. In fact, I'm trying to remember the channel I was going to go ahead and pull up. Well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and pull up one of mine if I can't remember it. All right. We put a lot of work into our YouTube channel. And here we go. All right. So in our YouTube channel here, obviously, we're in the business of selling consulting around Akka.net. Not just consulting, but, products, support, and all that sort of stuff. And most of the content I produce, I'm trying to go ahead and build for people who are trying to build things on top of our open source. So I tend to spend a lot of time putting together little PowerPoint presentations and little diagrams that are animated. Then I try to make videos that are all, so it looks like a bunch of these are around 20 minutes. This one was a webinar that got recorded. That's why it's a lot longer. Got a couple that are around 6 minutes. And then I have some more recent ones. If I go back here. Yeah, like these ones are integrating Akka.net and ASP.NET Core headless services. I try to shoot for about 10 minutes is kind of what I like to do. I find that if you kind of go too long and too deep on too much stuff, people just end up zoning out. But I really like doing YouTube personally. I find that it's a very sticky medium in terms of being able to get a high level of engagement from a small number of highly interested people. So I like that. It's also highly discoverable. YouTube by itself is like the second biggest search engine in the world after Google. So you end up getting kind of a lot of passive traffic that shows up in your channel that way. Now, the one thing I will point out, so I had someone who I've kind of given a little bit of coaching to, mentioned to me, goes, man, I've been trying to record some YouTube videos, but I feel like every time I get, let's say, a couple of hours into the filming and editing process, I just want to wipe the slate clean and start over because I'm not happy with how it came out. Feels like I'm wasting a lot of time starting and stopping all over again. My advice to him is that there's a couple things you can do to make recording YouTube videos a lot less error prone. But if you're having, let's say, a little bit of performance anxiety with getting in front of the camera, speaking, making sure you hit all your notes in terms of what you got to get through in your demo, here's a couple things I recommend that'll make it a lot easier. One, go ahead and, in terms of your live coding stuff, I would go ahead and plan on keeping it real short. One of the things you'll see me do when I'm, quote, live coding is I'll have one like Visual Studio Code editor up in front of me, and I'll have another one off on the right. And if I've got to take, let's say, a big chunk of like Microsoft.extensions.configuration code, it's not interesting for people to watch me type all that crap out. So I'll go ahead and just paste it into there and say, okay, here's what this code does, blah, blah, blah. The actual act of watching you type is not what people are there for. They want to see the code. They want to understand how to use it themselves, how to wield it, that type of thing. That's the more valuable part. So that's where a lot of developers make their mistakes when they're doing YouTube videos, is like those sorts of live unscripted things can be a little hectic. The other thing I'd recommend, and this is what I do with my videos, is I go ahead and spend a lot of time in PowerPoint talking about concepts and kind of teeing everything up, showing some graphics, illustrating how things work, and then we jump into a code demo. Trying to explain a concept while looking at the code can actually be very frustrating. And cannot be all that easy to follow either. So switching horses between the two can help a lot. If you don't want to do something like PowerPoint, you can also go ahead and use animated GIFs, or another thing that I've used before to kind of go and illustrate, little diagrams and ideas like that. I've also pulled up, my diagramming software. Like if I go to cloud.smartro.com, which is what I use typically. I'll go ahead and grab, yeah, sure, that works. Grab this one. This is a diagram I drew today for my KPI system, kind of explaining how all the little Azure bits all fit together. So I might go ahead, and if I didn't want to use PowerPoint, I take my cursor, explain what this does, how this relates to this, etc. And this kind of gives, a lot of software developers are visual learners. I'd say 80% of them are. This kind of helps. This is a better way of introducing concepts than the source code is. The source code is a great way for kinesthetic learning, for learning by doing. For getting introduced to a concept, you might want to go ahead and start with a diagram instead. Let's see. VS Code presenter mode can help, but definitely keep it tight. I've heard of that. I think I've seen some Microsoft people using it. It might have been Jeff Fritz on his YouTube channel, not YouTube, on his Twitch stream to use it. I can't remember if it was him or someone else, but yes, that is something I need to look into. I'm still kind of getting my feet wet with Visual Studio Code, so maybe I'll give that a try on another night here. So the last little things I'll go ahead and say on personal branding is that it's better if you go ahead and start early. If you need to go ahead and get, let's say, if your mom is the only one reading your blog posts, that's an okay place to start. You should go ahead and just put yourself out there. Don't be afraid of criticism. Criticism's a good thing if you end up getting any online. It means that someone's actually found your content. So you've got to go ahead and solve that problem first of trying to get someone to find it. Now, in terms of putting your content out there, here's what I recommend. Get engaged on Twitter, or get engaged in some other areas where like-minded .NET developers might be. This can be the .NET Reddit is one place you can go. I personally don't go there very much because when I was submitting articles I wrote, they basically told me that, oh, well, since you're running a for-profit business, like, we're not going to let you, game our system, blah, 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 which I was writing pretty detailed, like, high-quality posts on Akka.net, so that's kind of their loss. So I basically just decided, all right, I don't want to deal with this. So I don't submit any of my own content to Reddit. Another place you can submit content to is there's a very popular C# Discord that is maintained by a lot of the people on the Microsoft team. That's another place you can go, and you can also get feedback on your ideas there. Finally, there's a couple of aggregators that are specific to .NET that might be helpful. Not just .NET necessarily, but other stuff. There's .NET Kicks, which will go ahead and automatically pick up articles for you. And by the way, if you do enough blogging over and over again, where some of your content gets updated pretty frequently, .NET Kicks will automatically index your RSS and automatically publish the stuff out there. And the .NET Kicks Twitter account has like 20,000 followers on it, I think. See if I can find it on here. Well, I'm not doing a very good job with this so far. But there's a lot of stuff you can go ahead and do to try to drive some traffic up there.